Welcome to the show. My name is Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch, your host every week on this exciting new program, interviewing the people that are making a difference in the Jewish world. Tonight we have a special guest, Rabbi Simcha Weinstein, the campus rabbi at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. He's also the author of numerous books about Jewish culture and Judaism. Rabbi Simcha, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a bit, where you're from and how you got into this whole Jewish thing.
Okay, so I like to tell people I did not grow up religious. I grew up normal, for want of a better word. I'm from Manchester, England, and my background is really in the film industry. I went to film school, and for me growing up, religion was spiritual Valium, something that others needed to get answers to the existential questions of life that didn't always have answers. They say that when you make plans, God laughs, and really, as a student, I started getting involved with the various Jewish outreach groups. I took a trip to Israel, which was followed by a trip to yeshiva, which was followed by a longer trip to yeshiva, at which point I was becoming a little bit cynical with the film industry. Sometimes it's not always good to meet with your heroes and heroines, and I ended up becoming a rabbi.
Well, it's a lot of people grew up in Manchester with a similar story, but didn't make the choices you made. What made your choices happen?
I think I was always looking and seeking and searching, and I think the morality of Judaism, I think the spirituality, certainly going to Israel was fundamental in my life's journey. And I think I became cynical with the film industry, and I think that the Rabbanim that I met and the Torah that I was exposed to was really life formative.
Now, you've written several books, and one of them was called Up, Up, and Oy Vey. It was all about the comic book heroes and Judaism. Was that sort of a segue between your Jewish life and film? Was that a way to get back into it?
Well, like you said in the introduction, I'm the rabbi of Pratt Institute, which is really one of the finest art schools in America. And when I first became the rabbi of Pratt, I started to talk about the rabbi shtick, and it was not always as well received as I would like. And I really started to talk about the synthesis of theology and pop culture, which really comes very naturally to me. I went to art school, and now I'm suddenly the rabbi of an art school. So it was really an evolution, not a revolution. And the superhero book was initially a great way to connect to students. I grew up with a love of culture. Superheroes were very sort of fundamental to my childhood. And I think it was one of those things. It was kind of the right topic at perhaps the right time. I think as always in times of trouble, I think we turn to popular culture for solace. And the whole world seems to have gone superhero meshuggah, and it really fits in with my narrative.
Well, there's so many movies today about superheroes. When I grew up as a kid, I remember I was reading Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, but you wrote a book about this, so what did you talk about in your book? How are Jews connected to the superheroes?
So basically, it's a little known fact, though it's not so little known anymore, that every single superhero that's captured the imagination of the world was written and illustrated by Jews. Largely because the late 1930s were particularly anti-Semitic, and Jews with artistic aspirations were barred and limited from many industries. Comic books were somewhat in their infancy. It was a joke, and the pulp comic was a very easy industry for immigrant Jews to enter. And in the book I write about there's a Jewish cultural, historical, and I believe a spiritual connection to the all-American superhero.
One of my favorite superheroes was Superman, and I was wondering, does he represent something about the Jews protecting themselves or overcoming adversity?
Rabbi Schonbuch, I'm impressed. So Superman was created by two Jews from Cleveland, Ohio, Jerry Siegel and Joseph Schuster.
Very Jewish names.
Very Jewish names. And I think he represents many things. He was sort of a Samson-like figure. He's also based somewhat on the story of Moses, which the authors themselves have acknowledged. If you think about the story of Moses, Passover is on the horizon now, that as Egypt faces implosion, baby Moses is put in the reed basket, sent away grows up in a foreign culture, foreign land, becomes the savior. And really the story is mirrored in that of Superman. As Krypton implodes, baby Kal-El, as he's called in the comics, which is Hebrew, as you know, for the voice or vessel of God. Kal-El is put into the rocket ship, sent away, grows up in a Midwestern cornfield with the Kent family and becomes the savior of humanity. I think it's impossible to see Superman as anything other than an assimilation archetype. I think he represents the immigrant Jew seeking to assimilate, seeking to hide, seeking to become part of the golden Medina that was America at that time, but at the same time having this sort of secret, this secret heritage and this secret tradition.
Well, it's just like Moses, who had his own secret tradition in the house of Paro and eventually emerges to be the Superman to take the Jews out of Egypt.
Right, and tragically the story happened for real. As the old country of Europe implodes, Jewish children at that time were put onto kinder transports and sent away to live in safety with families in England. So the story really has tragic resonance. And if you look at the older comics from the archives, you'll see Superman will tie a knot in the cannon of a Nazi tank, and he'll take the war to Hitler himself. And that must have been a very powerful portrayal of wish fulfillment. That was really these Jewish creators' ways of fighting back and fighting the war. In fact, it's been said that Hitler himself denounced Superman a Jew, which is remarkable that these two kids from Cleveland were able to take their creation all the way to Berlin.
They were able to capture the imagination of their generation and become empowered through their art. Is that correct?
Right. And I think it brought wish fulfillment. Mm-hmm. It's been estimated that 1 in 4 Allied soldiers carried a copy of a comic book as they fought the war. And I think it's an interesting statement on the immigrant Jew. And if you think about it, really, there's nothing more American than Superman. Captain America, perhaps more so. He's the flag embellished as a costume, but really is not American. What he is he's the wish fulfillment of what it means to be American, coming from immigrant Jews who wanted to be all American. And I think the wish fulfillment was so powerful and poignant that America adopted Jewish fiction as reality. This may sound a little hokey, but I think perhaps the argument can be made that the American dream is a Jewish invention. It's an immigrant invention.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's about Superman. What about Batman? I mean, he doesn't have the same story as Superman. I don't see a Jewish theme in there exactly, but I see somebody fighting crime.
Right, so, yeah, Batman was created by 2 Jews, Bob Kane and Bill Finger. In fact, Gotham City was based on Gotham Jewelers, where Bill Finger's mother worked. He's certainly not a Jewish character. In fact, he's from another faith tradition in the comics, but he really represents, as Bob Kane wrote in his autobiography, the wish fulfillment that he had as a Jewish immigrant, in the sense that Batman has no powers. He's self-taught, he's self-funded, he's self-motivated, and it's really through a Yiddish cup that he's able to overcome obstacles. So he's kind of like this battling sort of immigrant figure who's able to overcome the odds and save the day.
But isn't that the theme of Judaism, to fight for the oppressed and to help the underdog?
Yeah, I think these things are rooted. I mean, you look at the story of Jacob, who spends the night wrestling with an angel. I think the wrestle and the struggle to overcome insurmountable odds is a very Jewish journey and a very Jewish topic. And I think that's what resonates with the superhero, and I think that's the reason that today, in 2017, that you'll see almost every blockbuster today is a superhero movie. I think America seeks solace in pop culture, and I think now there's so much tension around the world, I think we almost need these heroes more than ever.
Now, you're the rabbi at Pratt Institute. It's one of the leading schools of design in the world. So do you use your artwork and do you use your books as a way to communicate Judaism to students on campus today?
Very much. I think for me initially, as I said, the books were a great vehicle to connect to students in a language they can appreciate and a medium that they understand. Also, my synagogue, which we established on campus, I use as an art gallery. And for me, it's very important to students that students are given the chance to incubate emerging Jewish art. And I want them to express themselves and express their Jewish identity through the art. And I really believe that a Torah class which is very important, Rabbi, don't get me wrong, unfortunately doesn't always get as well attended as I would like. However, a piece of culture is able to reach the world. We see a short film, a piece of art, especially in this digital age, is really able to go viral and go completely global in a very short span of time.
So you're actually able to talk about things which are interesting your students today, and through talking about those things, then talk about Judaism as well.
Very much. I try, when I give over a class, a Friday night meal, I'll look at what's happening in the world, whether it be a political story or even the Oscars, and I'll try and find a Jewish perspective and a Jewish slant and a Jewish teaching. I know that recently was the Oscars, and there was the snafu with the best picture of the year, and I would use that as an example of students to overcome disappointment, and perhaps life doesn't always, pan out the way you would like, and perhaps this is a teaching tool, and we can look at the Parsha or look at a holiday and try and look at these things through the lens of Judaism.
Now, I know you've written other books. You wrote another book called Shtick Shift, which talks about actors and comedians in Judaism. So can you talk a bit about that book?
Yeah, sure. I wrote a book called Shtick Shift, Jewish Humor in the 21st Century. I think I was always the class clown in school, and I think that was really my way of overcoming insurmountable odds. I was a little bit bullied in school, and I found that when I told jokes, the cool kids liked me a lot more, and the bullies seemed to bully me a lot less. And I think that I tapped into the Jewish tradition of humor being used as a defense mechanism. And I think if you have the last laugh, you win even when you lose. In fact, Time magazine noted in the late 70s that 80% of the comedians at that time were Jewish. It's remarkable. 2% of the population becomes 80% of the comedians. I think Jews have always been America's jesters of choice. And we see this, I think, rooted in Torah. And I think it's really a way that we've overcome these terrible situations that, unfortunately, history has repeated itself on numerous occasions.
Does that emerge from the immigrant story? I mean, Jews just came to this country, let's say, 100 years ago, most Jews. So are they expressing something about their immigration story,
Sure,
the outsiders?
I think the Borscht Belt humor, Jack Benny, or all of these earlier Borscht comedians, I think they were talking about their own lives, and I think it's something, this outsider-insider, much like the superhero, I think like, the ventriloquist's puppet is able to say things that the ventriloquist wouldn't perhaps say. So I think that using humor as a way to fight back, in Fiddler on the Roof, they say, God bless the Tsar and keep him far away
from us.
From us. I think Jews have always used humor as a way, as a very powerful defense mechanism.
But do you think today's Jewish comics that are popular today, are they communicating Judaism through their art?
Yeah, I mean, Jewish humor is just as strong today, I think, as it's ever been. I think perhaps it's a little more edgy. I think it's perhaps certainly not so rabbinically approved for the Shabbat morning pulpit, but comedians like Sacha Baron Cohen, who takes on the persona of Borat, and he's able to twist anti-Semitism on itself. He's like the anti-Semite, and he's able to really show that, the way that we overvalue fake celebrity and undervalue real history. I think he's able to show the darkness in the world today.
Right. So Rabbi Simcha, thank you so much for joining us today. Are there any final things you'd like to tell our audience about art, Judaism, and comic books?
You buy my books right now, all of them, immediately on Amazon. I have a website, rabbisimcha.com. My books are available in all good bookstores. And I would just like to keep the journey and keep the struggle and keep the dialogue. I find these things really fascinating. And I think that as a Lubavitch rabbi myself, that something that was fundamental to the Rebbe's teachings was, as somebody comes back to Judaism and becomes a Balei Tshuva, that they are able to find the Torah in their journey. So I think that superheroes and humor are things that I've always studied, and the fact that I'm able to bring out a Jewish message, I think is very central to who I am as a rabbi. And I think just because you perhaps become closer to Judaism, I don't think you'll have to lose your personality in the process. Rabbi
Simcha, thank you so much for joining us. Would you come back again another show?
Anytime.
Thanks for joining us. Well, that wraps up another show of Family Matters. My name is Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch. See you next week on our new segment.